Good afternoon. Today's regular meeting of the Shasta County Elections Commission is now called to order. It is Monday, December... Somebody help me. Thank you. I've been on a staycation for 2 weeks. Monday, December 9th. And the time is 2 o'clock. The Commission will provide members of the public with a public comment open time period where the public may address the Commission on any item not listed on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of this Commission. Members of the public may also comment on any item on the consent calendar or regular calendar before or during the Commission's consideration of that item. Commission action or discussion cannot be taken on non-agendized matters, but the Commission may briefly respond to statements or questions. We encourage everyone to fill out a speaker request form and submit it to the clerk of the board. Forms are located at the back of the board chambers in those little cubbies. The meeting will adjourn by 5 p.m. With that, we will begin with the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will you stand with me for the prayer, please? Lord, we humbly come before you, and we're so grateful for all that is going on publicly and behind the scenes. We just ask for your guidance that we would be able to be recalibrated together and unify as your people, Lord, in this county, to give you glory in all the decisions made. Be in this meeting today and give us wisdom and guidance. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So first we'll have public comment time, and I have a card for Dolores.
When is this getting fixed? Is this going to be fixed soon so we can show documents here? Okay, if we're going to be talking about election and any ballots or anything regarding election, I think that I know you guys don't have teeth to recommend no matter what to the board, but I could tell you right now, and I've been saying this since 2012, fraud, there's fraud in Shasta Lake, there's fraud everywhere, including our county. I got the documents, and also the documents are from the election department. When they update every time to show you what's the count and where's the numbers, how can you go backwards? That's where I have a problem. How can you go backwards on their own database? So let's say Shasta Lake, December 7th, I had 933 votes. November 15, I had 972. And in the final of the database, well, before all that was final, I have here was December 4th or December when the record search actually put out the database. I had 1,137. So how did I lose 205 votes? And this is the election department, the voter document, the database they put update to let you know the votes, where you're at, the status. And then in the Shasta County where I ran for the Office of Education, how did I lose from 6,000 votes to down to 5,073 votes? If I lost votes, that tells you the county has lost vote, the people who ran. So therefore, this election should not be certified. They should be an investigation. But Mr. Toller, actually, I reached out to him back in August 17 of this year, and I said, hey, you need to do an investigation because two people who actually don't qualify to run for the city of Shasta Lake. And you know what he sends me? He sends me a text and tells me he's too busy, his staff is too busy to take it to the DA. How can I take it to the DA? She ain't gonna do anything. Then I send it to the Secretary of State. But still, his job is to investigate. His job is to prevent freaking voter fraud. This is voter fraud. Totally. The election is fraud. People lost votes, not just me, including everybody who ran. And like I said, I downloaded everything. The documents don't lie, the names and everything. It shows there's a freaking election fraud here.
Okay, thank you. Bev Gray?
I want to support Dolores on this. There are problems with our election in every aspect. I was trying to review the people in 2020 that were invalid votes, and guess what? They still might live in the same place that doesn't exist, but they voted. Most of them have been voting in every election, and we need to put a stop to it. We need to clean the voter rolls. We need to have ID. We need to not certify this election or declare it as a valid election. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Jim Burnett, and just wanted to say that this election from start to finish has been horrible. Every aspect of it is in need of overhaul. It needs reform from the logic and accuracy testing, actually from the voter rolls to logic and accuracy testing to mail-in ballot processing to in-person vote processing. Everything about it is going to need scrutiny and overhauling. And more about this will be revealed tomorrow, but we've had a core team of people diligently putting in hundreds of hours of observation time, and so they've uncovered a lot of things, sworn out a lot of affidavits about this particular election. And speaking of observation, there has been no meaningful observation, and that is actually, I would call it a crime, because the state of California and the federal government says that observation is a key component of the election process. It's not just a nice amenity. It's absolutely required for the public to be able to audit and verify what's going on. And believe me, it's very opaque. The whole thing is impenetrable, and we're supposed to rely on a stamp of approval by the ROV, which means nothing. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Thomas. I agree with everything Jim had to say. There's been a lot of people doing a lot of hard work down there trying to have transparent elections, and it's impossible to set up. I don't mean the location or anything like that. I mean the way it's run. They have a hand count, supposedly hand count. I was there numerous times. I never once seen a ballot. I would see somebody over there with a ballot telling me something, but I never got to see a ballot. There's no three eyes on it. So you take a lot of people's word for my vote, and I don't think that's what America's set up for. And again, you can kick it down the road or stop it. I don't think our supervisors are going to do anything. It's real sad. And it's sad that society's going to have to possibly, anyway, changes should be made. And, we have it right here in this little river city. We could do it. And hopefully you guys will listen to people. There's been a lot of hard work down there, and no one seems concerned about it. They're on with life. They're trusting their public officials to have a fair election, and it's not happening. Thanks.
Thank you.
I agree with everything that's been said so far. The only way we're going to fix this is to go beyond Sacramento. We got to go to the DOJ. Hopefully we have a DOJ that's not corrupt. R5 and R6 is going to speak to that tomorrow. We got to go around Sacramento. They've voted their way in illegitimately. Every law that comes out of Sacramento makes it easier to cheat. I mean, jungle primary, all that stuff. I mean, give me a break. They're the ones that benefit from these elections. They're the ones that are making the rules. It's in your face. I mean, everything we try to do, they pull the rug out from under us. We got to go around them. We're being held hostage by a illegitimate, tyrannical regime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Lund and Commissioners. My name is Lori Bridgeford, and I'm here for public comment. I'd first like to thank all the Corps Commissioners for their part and role in the past year. It's been difficult, stressful, and the media makes it confusing. They don't report what's going on, and I absolutely hope that we can get a special emergency board meeting, preferably at night, to discuss what we'll be looking at in today's agenda. I did maybe 5 or 6 different days, one night until 10:20 p.m., and I'm just stunned at the level. I mean, I was warned, I was told, I've been listening, and to be there live in person is astonishing. I would like to publicly thank Dr. Laura Hobbs for the forms that she put together. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what I'm watching, because we're not told, because of this whole Hart Intercivic mess, the Runback ink overspray mess. Immediately, everything should have just came to a screeching halt. White flag, stop. And it didn't. So the leadership was horribly lacking, and it's never happened before. Why we sent someone to Nevada County, Joanna, we still haven't gotten a report and summary on that. So, Mr. Garbett, I don't know if you were there doing any observation of any meaningful content, and you were tracking, not there for a couple minutes. I'm talking, hours to track the different, okay, shaking your head no. Okay, well then I'm not sure why you're here if you still think this is a joke, a farce, and a comedy show, because it's serious. It absolutely is very serious. I don't know what to make of the person that was here previously speaking in public comment. This individual has bashed and slammed and been so rude and rageful to Patrick Henry Jones, and he's the one that was officially on record as saying, no, we're not needing to certify or declare this. He's on record voting no, along with myself and another individual. So if people don't understand or care to understand what's happening, they get irritated, unhinged, rude, aggressive, ill-tempered, even acting out to the point of being arrested. And those are some of your colleagues and friends that have appointed those that interact on News Cafe. Again, Mr. Garbett, you seem to be a common denominator with a few other individuals. I am not sure why you're still sitting here. I would love you to explain and justify why you're here. Otherwise, you're just like a plant and a troll, and you're dragging this all down, and we've got people that have absolute evidence and proof, and they're disgusted, and it's all coming out. So there you go, 30 seconds. Political leaders often avoid discussing what's going on. It's not about your guy won, so why don't you move on and shut up. That's not what it's about. We want fair, honest, transparent elections. And I don't know how it's going to happen with what just happened, but I just think you have to restore or resign Mr. Toller and take Joanna Francesca with you. She showed no leadership whatsoever in this nightmare.
All right, thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Okay, seeing none. We'll go to the consent calendar. Oh, okay, great, thank you. Approve the minutes of the meeting held on November 4th, 2024 as submitted. Do I have a motion from anyone? Or does any comments? Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those.
I second, there you go.
Thank you. If you guys can turn on your speakers there. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Got 5 ayes. Okay. All right, moving on to R1. Consider assigning 2 or fewer commissioners to research the tabulation of ballots from the November 5th, 2024 Shasta County presidential general election, including observations of tabulation and draft recommendations for commission consideration to send to the Board of Supervisors at a later date. Do we have any discussion about this? Oh, we do have a public comment. Dolores? Yes. Would you like to come up and speak?
Yes. For what item?
R1.
And what?
Has to do with tabulation of the ballots.
Okay, I'm going to try to stick to it. But August 20 at 5:48, Mr. Tom Toller reached out to me on my cell phone. And I got proof that he says it is not his responsibility he has no authority in the election department to basically any allegations that we make. That's including me. So I have that, and that was at 5:48, August 20th of this year. So anything has to do with the election, I'm telling you right now, without a doubt, 100%, and I've been saying this since 2012, there is election fraud. We need to not just go around and doing the same old thing. We need to change the strategy.
Can you bring it back to tabulation? We're talking about creating an ad hoc committee to look into issues with tabulation from
if you're going to get somebody to look into it, you got to get somebody who knows what they're looking at. Because if you don't, you're going to be spending time and wasting time. I can tell you right now, I have experience because, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can tell you right now, the evidence is right here by their own database, and I took snapshots of the time and the date, where it shows, and how many ballots. It shows I lost, even in the county, I lost almost 1,000 votes. How can you lose 1,000 votes? So I'm telling you right now, if you want somebody who has experience and knows how to look for corruption, those two are over there snipping and talking and, think it's funny. But I'm telling you right now, since 2012, when I discovered corruption in Shasta Lake, I've been doing this for a long time. And I know where to look for it. And if anybody who actually looked at the updates all the time this year, looking and checking to see what's been going on, go back to your downloads. Look at the downloads. You'll see it because those updates, it shows. So if you want a committee, you got to get somebody who knows what they're looking for. Don't get some rookie who doesn't know, they're just learning. I'm just saying, you got to get somebody with experience. Don't put somebody like Tom Toller who had no experience.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Bev Gray?
The tabulation procedure has to be looked at in real depth, okay? It was like a 50% rejection rate on almost the whole entire time. Sometimes it was way more, sometimes a little less. The problem is that they duplicated ballots, brought them back through, and they were rejected again. Not as big a percentage, but why were any of them being rejected? Because of the barcode. That was not an overspray problem. Okay, so it has to be looked into because that is just an outrageous amount. And why were other counties not affected, just Nevada County? It needs to be seriously looked into, and I wouldn't mind helping out with that. Okay, I was there probably more than anybody, total hours, probably there more than anybody else. So I saw it, it is worse than you can even imagine. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, regarding the tabulations, Lori Bridgeford, I'm holding a document that was put together for those of us that were in one of the various zones. Some were tabulations, some were in the limbo room, duplication. There were people privately doing triple checks, and then there was downstairs 1% manual. So Brad Garrett, please pay attention. There was a lot of different things to be aware of, learn, and we had to teach ourselves. No one from the county helped us on tabulation. There were 4 screens in the hallway, and I had to try to watch what the other people were doing to figure out the time, the device that it was on, the batch number, any notes regarding the precinct, and if it was a successful, scanned, or rejected. Again, the moment this went into duplication, and then the duplications were erroneous, having problems in their own mess, I am stunned this wasn't shut the doors, call it a day, and have an emergency meeting. This was absolutely urgent. And to continue on, and if this ROV absolutely certified this, I have no words to explain how an attorney, Mr. Tom Toller, can certify any of the mess at just this tabulation station that I was at several times. So it wasn't like I just did it once and moved on. Several times, and sometimes all the screens were gone, or the bat room, bat cave, stupid name ever, was closed and dark, so we had to figure out where are the people. then they're in the break room, and you can't observe the break room. So I'm just trying to give you an idea of what it was like to be a very regular observer. Thank you.
Thank you.
R1 and R2 should go together. If you approve to do the subcommittee for R1, you should do that the same for R2, because they go hand in hand. Tabulation was all messed up, and the duplication was even worse. And one of the things that bothered me and everybody else was when they're doing duplication or looking at the ballots, whether it's pre-duplication or after tabulation or before, you don't get to see the marks on it, so you really don't know what they're approving and what they're not. So it goes back to observation. But if you go ahead and do R1, do the subcommittee, do it for R2 also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. So I observed the tabulation and the whole process from start to finish. It was very convoluted, very confusing. I was there most of the time. As new people would come in, we would, direct them to Joanna Francesca to get a tour of what was going on, and so they could hear from her perspective what was happening. And then they would ask me follow-up questions, and I would try to explain to the best of my knowledge, based on what I've seen, what is happening. But even somebody who spent, I would say at least 100 hours there during this last election, it was still confusing. I still couldn't explain exactly what was happening where. They didn't have a directional workflow. What you need to have in a situation like this is you start at point A, you go to point B, you go to point C, you go to point D, and everyone can see that the ballots that started over here are being processed in a directional flow, and then they end, at point D. We did not see that. It was you'd go from A to B, and then back to B, or back to A, and then back to C, and it was just completely messed up. So the whole point with, that's just a minor detail. The problem was that there was a 50% rejection rate, and everybody who submitted a ballot, pretty much 1 out of 2 people had to have their ballot duplicated. And it was duplicated in a process that was not fair and was not transparent. So the election observers could not see the duplication process. We only had view over one person's shoulder in the limbo room. This is where they were using the run back.
Can we try to stick to tabulation?
Just tabulation.
Yeah.
So, and the main problem with the tabulation is that we cannot see how those computers are tabulating our votes. It's a black box. We can't see inside. We can't see what it's recording, if they recorded the votes accurately or not. They have told us we will not have access to the audit logs. So the audit logs are for citizens to be able to go through and to see if the machine tabulated correctly or not. Well, they said, no, we're not giving you that this time. So this is not a public process. It's not a transparent process. And there's problems from start to finish. The fact that they removed the ballots that had to be duplicated in the blind, they didn't even compare on the screen to make sure they were removing the right ballot. It was just fraught with errors from beginning to end. It should not be trusted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
1 second, please. Okay, anyone else for R1? We're on tabulation.
Thomas again. The audit logs.
We're on tabulation.
I think, on tabulation,
No,
then,
that's true. Yeah.
if they will not let you have the audit logs, why?
Well, anyway, I'll just mention that the state came down saying that we couldn't see them, that the general public can't see them anymore.
Yeah, because there's evidence there. But this is supposed to be a court or a commission. Listen to people. They will not let us see audit logs. You can't go there. They'll show a room over there where they're tabulating all votes and everything. They got machines to give the answer, but they will not even let Laura see the tabulations because some guy at the state said you can't do it. Does that sound right to everyone?
Thank you. Okay, anyone else for R1? Okay, bring it back to the commissioners. Any comments?
It's important, all of this is important, so I wouldn't mind being on this ad hoc committee and maybe possibly the next one too, so there you go.
Anything from this side? Did you do any
I could just make a
observation,
comment,
Margaret? Were you down there? Oh.
Yes, I did. I spent time down there. I actually looked at the tabulation. You can catch the patterns of what's going on. They were kind of quick, but you had to be quicker than the group that was tabulating. And I could see the patterns. I could see the rejections. It was a great help sitting with a group that had actually been there for hours and hours and hours, and it was easy explanation as to what we're looking at. And so yes, I did that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I agree, and I had opportunity to observe as well, and I'm sorry about my voice. But I will say that just being able to understand the process from beginning to end is very difficult. And so what we were able to see and try to make sense of, we took notes and documented, but there was more places that were unseen and unclear about what was happening and how things were connecting together. So I'm still, trying to piece it together and see how it works. And it just doesn't seem to have any flow whatsoever, anything verifiable. So yes, I agree.
I would like to be on this committee, so you guys whoever wants to be on it needs to fight it out.
If you concede and I'll allow you to go. I know we have another ad hoc that we're working on with similar values. So.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that myself and Margaret Hanson be on an ad hoc committee to look into the tabulation of ballots from the November 5th, 2024 Shasta County Presidential General Election, including observations of tabulation and draft recommendations for commission consideration to send to the Board of Supervisors at a later date.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Should we take a roll call vote? But,
Do we have discussion now?
well, we were having discussion. Did you want to say something?
Well, I did. Tim had a good point. R1 and R2 are essentially the same.
Yeah. Well, they're two different.
I understand. But
tie together.
it's exactly, it's something that's going to be done at the same moment. He was right. R1 and R2, in the interest of expediency, should probably be combined. But
Yeah, they should probably be done at the same time, but they are two distinct, separate issues that require research and compiling of information, and I think that they really stand alone. Any comments from over there?
So just that it's at the discretion of the commission. If the commissioners decide that both of these items could be handled by one ad hoc committee, it could be folded into one ad hoc committee. I would just recommend that because of the way it's agendized, maybe we put a pin in this one for the time being, although there is a motion with a second on the table, so I don't think we can, and then move on to discussion for R2, and then we can always come back and revisit with, say, another motion after following discussion.
Yeah, I think it's fine for the time being to keep them separate, and if we want to combine them later, but they can also be done at the same time, sort of concurrently. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Yeah, please.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Mitchellak.
Yes. Your vote?
Abstain.
Commissioner Plum?
Yes.
Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Commissioner Garbutt?
No.
Motion carries. Okay, R2, consider assigning 2 or fewer commissioners to research the duplication of ballots from the November 5th Shasta County presidential general election, including observations of duplication and draft recommendations for commission consideration to send to the Board of Supervisors at a later date. Dolores, would you like to get up here and speak?
What item 2?
Yep, we're talking about duplication.
When you duplicate any ballots, I do believe the voters didn't vote for anybody to basically print those and double those ballots. That means you took over their vote to just assume that's what they prefer. So the election department has violated multiple times the voters' rights. And for us to have a fair election, in other words, it's like me going to you and say, hey, I'm gonna just go ahead and make copies of your document without your permission. They didn't have my permission to freaking go ahead and make double ballots. That's not something they should take it upon their hands regardless. This is why they need to stop it now. They need to file a restraining order or injunction. That's what I had to do. Regardless how my lawsuit turns out, I ain't gonna stop because they also is a voter. My rights been violated. I will file a freaking federal lawsuit. If that's what it comes down to, I will. I am not gonna hesitate. Nobody had a right to make double ballots. Is that why I got less votes on being running for city of Shasta Lake in the county? Is that why I got less? So somebody screwed up, so why should I be the one to be punished or have not had an opportunity to have a fair election? And those votes should be recount or have something. In other words, I think it's going to be where you're not going to even to be able to do a recount because they already printed double ballots. You can't do that. Whose permission? Who authorized them? Did they look up the law and say they had authorization from all the voters? I didn't get permission at all. So therefore, my rights been violated because they went and they did it without my knowledge, without my permission. I think this county, they picked the wrong person to freaking run that department. They thought they picked the right one. And that was Patrick Jones. And everybody else just went along. This is why we need to do a background check on people when you put somebody in place to make sure they're not coming in here with dirty hands, making sure they're not breaking any laws or violating laws. Because now the people, me or anybody else, are getting screwed over. And this is why I get pissed off and I come up here and get pissed off because I'm sick of this. You know how long this has been going on? A lot longer than you guys been involved. So yes, I think this is ridiculous that we are going to just say it's okay. They better not freaking vote for this.
Thank you. Bev Gray.
Once a ballot is duplicated, it's no longer your ballot. Okay? The thing is that I don't understand how people can think that to hand count, it's a 25% rejection error factor. Okay, these are the same people that were looking at the duplicated ballot. Now, what makes people think that this was any better than them looking at the original ballot with 2 to 4 people? Okay, it would have taken us a lot less time and been a lot more efficient and accurate because they wouldn't have been rejected time after time. There was 9 sets of eyes on these ballots is what we're told. Okay, that to me is a real loss of chain of custody. okay? And the chain of custody, the fewer people handling the ballot, the better, okay? I would like to know, because, I've already found over 100 people that have been on the ballots voting every election, and their addresses doesn't exist, or they moved 20 years ago, whatever. I would like to know if those ballots specifically, how many of those were rejected? Because I don't know how these people are getting the ballot if their address doesn't exist and filling out the ballot and giving it to us. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Laura Hobbs.
Okay. Good afternoon. So the duplication system is fraught with errors. When I was sitting there watching in a period of about 5 minutes, I would see anywhere between 6 to 12 errors. And most of the time, the person who was sitting there, and they were working in groups of two, one person was calling it out and the other person was checking the duplicate, using the mouse to click it and fix the errors, because half the time what was happening was if the bubble wasn't filled in 100%, then it wouldn't show up in the duplicated electronic picture that they saw on the screen. So on all of those, they had to manually click and fill in that bubble. So what happens was, most of the time they caught the mistakes, and that was a good thing. But we could only visualize over the shoulder of one of those 4 workstations. So we couldn't observe if everyone else was fixing those mistakes as they came out. But what happened was we had the Secretary of State send in 3 state employees, up to Redding, California. There were 3 people that I saw. There was a man and 2 women. And one of the women, she was assigned to work in the duplication room, the limbo room. And she was in one of the far corners, so I couldn't directly see over her shoulder. However, I could tell that she was dozing off. She was the person using the mouse. She was the one at the wheel clicking and fixing these errors as they came up. So her partner was reading out loud. It was her responsibility to make sure the duplicate was correct. Well, she had this look on her face that she was just about to fall asleep at any moment. She was kind of like her eyes were fluttering and she was having a hard time even just looking at the screen. And then eventually, I couldn't really tell, but I was like, she's not really clicking anything. And then it was confirmed to me that she actually was not doing her job properly, because at one point, there should be 2 images on the screen, right? One is the original image, the second is the duplicated image. Well, at one point, she didn't even have a duplicated image before her, but she kept scrolling down as if there was a duplicate image. She didn't even realize till she went to go click save that there was no image there at all. She was completely asleep at the wheel. So we cannot trust this. I know they had another system where they double-checked everything, but that was done in private in a break room in a group of 1. So you don't know that they actually double-checked and caught all of those errors. I don't trust the duplication system, and it was not certified, and it was not verified, and it was not tested. So we should not use that.
Thank you. If you could just give me 1 second. Alrighty, thanks.
All right, we're on R2, the duplication issue. I immediately saw a profound problem when there's absolutely no cameras in that room. The hallway has 2 cameras. I'm talking about the black round ones, one at the end of the hall and one near the break room, lunchroom. 0 cameras were in this new created duplication room to figure out what the hell is going on. There were, I know this is, we can't show you pictures because we weren't allowed to take pictures to prove and have evidence. So I'm going to describe to you this small room with 1 glass window. 2 chairs finally in a roped off area. So we had absolutely no meaningful visuals. All we heard, and if all people were at each duplication station, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 2 persons per desk, calling out names, Donald, Steve, Richard, all these names, loud. It's meaningless. It's a cacophony of just mess. Okay, so that's the problem. We have no camera on these people. People are going in and out. Some people do not have their staff ID badge, which is kind of problematic because we don't know how many people are extra help people, and how were these people vetted if they're part-time help? Who are these people? No badges, yet we had to have it around our neck, and God forbid we take it off on the way down in the elevator or before we reach the black wrought iron fence, which I would still like to know how much we paid for that. So, extreme issues in the duplication room, just like the other people are saying, chain of command, you can't whisper. Again, this is on the 2nd floor, and I put in an affidavit, but I tell you what, there are people coming and going with signing off on clipboards, and they're going off to the break room to triple check, and you have no idea because they don't have anything posted to tell you what the process is. So I did see people getting glossy-eyed, and they're trying to be funny, and they're trying to stay awake, and I'm not sure if they had 4-hour shifts with the lunch break or an 8-hour shift, or if they were there all dang day. I don't know, but I tell you what, when your eyes are glued to a screen for that long, you are going to have some stress and strain, and you're going to make mistakes. This all could have been done by a hand count long time ago. We keep saying it. It's not a broken record. This used to work for eons and centuries. So, I don't like the lack of access. Nothing's meaningful. The duplication thing was the most disgusting thing to see and witness because it was just a circus of nothing. The names aren't there. Why can't we stand behind these people? I'm one of these observers that got there early on and was attacked by a bunch of fake troll people there to make trouble, okay? So, I have put in my affidavits and I have more I can do, but I just want you to know, duplication _ horrible.
Thank you. Anyone else for R2? Oh, I'm sorry, Dan, you were next. I
Go ahead, Thomas, you're up.
Okay.
Thomas, yeah, I didn't quite understand the duplication. To me, duplication means the same. You have the ballot that was turned down, then on the monitor you got the duplicate. Well, they're not the same. How can it be duplicate if it's not the same? And then we could only see one of those monitors from outside the door looking in. If a guy was taller, you couldn't see. And actually, I seen one duplicate. They were erasing on the duplicate. So if they're erasing on the duplicate, what's wrong with the original? I didn't understand it when you duplicate something, it should be the same. So if it's the same, that's how the guy voted. Why should people be filling it in?
Thank you.
Hey, Commission, thanks for hearing us out. I know that you don't have the authority to do stuff, but you can make recommendations. And I again want to publicly thank our 2 gentlemen. I know you guys brought in meals for our workers, and I know the workers did all they could, and they were following orders. Hopefully, while you guys were over there delivering that food, I hope you 2 gentlemen were able to observe some of the stuff, because I know there was denial about whether there was problems with our election. And I'm sure, just as you've heard from the testimonies, 5 minutes over there and you could see problems, that these things were not being done by the law. They were not being done by any logical reason, and if those were $10 bills they were counting, the whole thing would have been shut down by any banking facility. So lots of problems. The duplication is a farce. Huge problem. If the public was aware that we were duplicating their ballots, that their ballots weren't being fed into a machine, and that somebody else was making those, they would be very upset. The way that the machine, some of them were hand copied, duplicated, whatever term you want to use, but many of them were fed through a machine that was provided right away by the printer, which why would they already have a machine ready to fix a problem if they didn't know there was going to be a problem. That machine wasn't certified here. No one observed any certification or check on that machine. It wasn't shown whether it was connected to the internet or not. We allowed all of those ballots to be fed into a machine that somebody provided for us right after the emergency occurred, and that's a problem. I think the commission is very aware of the huge problem you've caused, because this has been a very divided audience. Every time I've been here, there's been a civil war of people out here fighting and squabbling. They're united after the election, after watching your duplication process. I know it's not the commission's fault, but you got to make recommendations to those supervisors. There's no way they can certify that election. They cannot say that this was done with any observable evidence. The whole thing is based on trust, and the election office has proven that we cannot trust them. We went in, we said, hey, we're here to observe. There's nothing to be observed. There's nothing to be observed. They would turn observers away, and 2 hours into it, oh, there is something to observe. Yes, we're opening the ballots and we're writing on the ballots. You know, what was the thinking there? So they lost our trust a week before the election and have never earned their trust by the way they treated us hostilely. So thank you. Appreciate your time.
Dan raises a very good point about the machines that Runbeck brought in to mitigate the problem. I didn't hear of any logic and accuracy testing done on that. As a matter of fact, we still don't have the results of the original logic and accuracy tests on the native equipment that the elections office uses. So those are huge problems. And just to reiterate, the duplication process, the 4 workstations there were not all observable. I mean, you couldn't see all 4 at the same time. We were sequestered either to one side or looking through the window, and you still didn't have a good, clear vision of what was going on. So unless you can see the markings on the ballot, it's all for naught. You're just watching a pantomime. Another thing about the duplication process is that after ballots are brought in and scanned and duplicated, they're brought back to what is usually the break room. But the break room, when it's not time for break, is also repurposed into some kind of a sorting, comparing room where up to 9 people, up to 9 workers, are each sitting with a couple of stacks of ballots comparing those. And we can't even get into the break room. We can go right up to the cordoned part of it, and we can see maybe 1 or 2 tables, sometimes up to 2 or 3 different people working. Some of them are in pairs, but they're not working in pairs because they're each individually sorting through the ballots, doing something that we're not aware of. And then, after they're done with that, we don't know, but we do know that the same people bring ballots back into the duplication room. If you tried to do a flow chart of this, you would go crazy. It would look like spaghetti. I don't know how you can have any reasonable chain of custody with operations like that, and I do understand this is a special circumstance with the ink overspray, but compare that with the simplicity of a hand count where you can start with ballots over here that are not counted, put them on tables in front of 2 to 4 people, and then move them over there. You have a very absolute chain of custody, and you don't have ballots going here and there between rooms, and it looks like it's back and forth. It probably isn't back and forth between the break room and the duplication room, but we don't know. We just don't know. And that is not observing. You're observing people move stuff, but you don't know what they are moving, why they are moving it, and certainly you don't see the markings on the ballot. So it's just a big mess. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else for R2? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commissioners.
Initially, when Mr. Burnett mentioned combining these two, R1 and R2, I thought, well, maybe that's a good thing. And then as I remember that both of these actions take place with two separate and different machines, so I believe it would be wise to keep them separate. And I have a flood of memory in my head too, just knowing that, seeing the duplication process yourself, you expect a copy or duplicate of an original to be identical, the same. But understanding that somewhere intermittent the process that the machine itself fills in the choice. And so there's something missing there. There's just not enough meaningful observation to be able to clarify what actually happens. What does the person choose as opposed to what the machine chooses? So I would like to be on this ad hoc committee if there's anyone else that would like to join me.
Alrighty. Anybody else have anything to say?
So I would like to be on this as well, unless you want to do it.
I totally want to do it.
All right, I will defer to you, my chair.
Well, so I wanted to ask if anybody is, Brad, do you have any interest in this or no?
No.
Okay.
I didn't hear the question.
Do you have any interest in this, sir?
No, I don't.
Okay. Of the two of you, did either one of you really stay there long enough and try to figure out what was going on in the duplication room as far as which areas of ballots were what and what they were doing with them and how they were moving through the flow?
I would have to say I attempted to, but it was prevented. And at one point, we were told to go home and that they were sending the employees home at 3:30, and we were planning on staying till 7. And so they said, no, nothing's going to happen here. And so me and two other people stayed longer, and we saw things go on in the duplication room that was very alarming. Anna was writing on the ballot, couldn't see what she was writing. We asked Joanna. Joanna came in and tried to explain. So there was a lot of fracturing going on in that room that I could not connect the dots accurately. We were kept over in the left corner, unable to see in the 4 locations what was happening there. Tried to write down and ask Joanna's help to explain, and the answers were spaghetti. So with that, I did spend several hours in that room on different days and trying to understand the process of what.
So you have a mental picture at
I
least
do.
of what was going on?
The missing pieces,
How
yes.
about you? The reason I'm asking that is because I am thoroughly versed in what was going on there, and I just want to make sure whoever I work with has some knowledge of what I might be talking about.
I was there. I asked questions when I was able to, not when we were supposed to be in the quiet area, but I observed a lot of things. I was in on looking at what the computers were doing. I was watching, yes, you cannot see with meaningful ability to, you can only see one machine that they were duplicating with. The others, you could not meaningfully see it. So that was quite alarming to me as well. So, but I think I understand enough of the process that.
I mean, of all the different,
yes, all of it, yes.
all the different areas where they had ballots and what they piles were and
Yes.
where they would flow
Yes.
was.
Yeah.
So do you have an opposition to Patty doing it, or do you?
Not in the least. She
Okay.
can do it.
Okay. All right, somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we have 2 or fewer commissioners to research the duplication of the ballots from the November 5th, 2024 Shasta County Presidential General Election.
Actually, you need to state who.
And for Commissioners Plum and Lund to do the.
Can you get that, or, okay, or do you need us to restate it? Okay.
No, I mean, I sit here in meeting after meeting, I listen to all of these people stand up and make the same complaint. I can look at this, I wonder sometimes about our role, about my role. As a commissioner, we're supposed to make recommendations, we're supposed to, I don't know whether we're supposed to investigate or not, but we're supposed to make recommendations on what it is that we see, what it is that we find. I see person after person after person after person. I sometimes don't agree with what it is that they're saying, But in one respect, they're all saying exactly the same thing. And that's that they can't see what's going on, that they can't tell what's happening, that they have no transparency, and that raises questions in their mind with regard to veracity. Now, if we're going to talk about something, everybody spent a bunch of time. I went down there 4 different times, and I went down and saw exactly the same thing. Commissioner Jones stands up and he says, well, I couldn't see this thing. Well, how's about? So we're going to make a recommendation. Why don't we go back to basics? The leg bone is connected to the thigh bone is connected to the hip bone, and the hip bone is a prehistoric facility. If we want to make one recommendation or have one ad hoc committee or do one thing, let's make a recommendation to the supervisor. We've heard hundreds of people and dozens of people stand up hundreds of times and say exactly the same thing, that they can't see what's going on, and that what we should do, and I would propose this as a obviously unrelated to this item, for previous agenda item, for a recommendation, by this commission, that we do something about the problem and not investigate something and make some report that more than half the people are going to consider redundant, irrelevant, and it ends up in a waste bin. What are we doing? We're wasting our time here. Let's talk about something and do something that will make a difference, like recommend to the supervisor that take the $1.5 million if they don't want to, never mind about that they take, this money that's floating around in limbo, they can't just sucker bucks with it, they can't decide what they want to do with it, and to get a facility that will address all of these people's concern, not about anything other than transparency, the fact they can see what it is that's going on.
Commissioner, I'm sorry to interrupt. If we could stick to this particular agenda item, and I would recommend that you save that motion potentially for commissioner reports towards the end of the agenda, and then you could potentially make a motion to that effect today.
Thank you.
I think that's consistent with your intent based on what you just said. But we have a motion on the table. I think we're pending a second.
We have a motion. Okay, wait. Commissioner Garbett, did you have something to say?
I just think this duplication thing is probably a one-off thing. Hopefully, Runbeck or Hart, we'll get it all figured out for the next election. So this duplication is probably just going to happen this one time. But yeah, I agree with the people out there that are groaning that we probably should just junk the Hart system. It's obviously very problematic. We should go back to leasing the Dominion equipment. And furthermore, we should probably find another printer. There's other printers. And so, let's get rid of Runbeck, let's get rid of Hart, let's go back to when we had decades of worry-free elections.
Okay, I want to make a comment on something that was just said, but you said so much, I was trying to take notes and I think I forgot. What was the first thing you said, Commissioner Garbett? It had to do with duplication. I know.
I don't think we're going to have a problem with ballots again, because we know about the overspray issue.
Thank you.
I'm sure Runbeck is probably not going to do that again.
Okay.
So I think this is just a one-off thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that because in our March election, there were issues with duplication. In the past, they were always duplicated by hand with 2 people. And they were duplicated if they were spoiled, meaning there was something spilled on it, or they were torn, or the dog ate half of it, or whatever. So that's when they're duplicated, and it was always done with 2 people, 2 people's eyes on it. They're noting it, they're logging it.
No,
and it can be observed.
But I'm talking about the overspray on the dog.
I understand, but I want to finish, please. That's how it was always done up until March. In March, they did some funky thing where they used the Hart machines to duplicate ballots, which was a much more lengthy process. It took them longer to duplicate a ballot, and they did it in a room behind a closed door with a little window. You couldn't see anything that was on the screen because the screen was turned perpendicular to the window. And so they used the Hart machine to duplicate the ballot. So they would take the
Madam
ballot,
Chair.
they'd put it on the machine.
Madam Chair.
This has to do with duplication.
I understand, but this item is specifically for November 5th. We're talking about March. We
Well,
need to get
okay,
back on
so
this item.
getting to November, now they're using a different machine to duplicate. I was just trying to state the history for everybody's knowledge. So now they've used a different machine to duplicate ballots, and it's not good and it's not working. The old method worked, it was observable. This new method, as everybody just stated, has numerous issues, and they may intend to continue to use a machine to duplicate ballots. And that may not be what they should do because there's been too many problems with it. So I think it does warrant a recommendation from the commission after the research is done and compiled and a recommendation brought back, which may or may not conclude that, machines should not be used for duplication. It's not working. Okay, so that's my response to that. So we have a motion. We had a second?
No, not yet, Chair.
No? Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and did you need that restated or do you have?
No, I just think that if you're going to do something like that, that the motion should be amended to include a recommendation with regard to what you just said. I'm going to research it, that's fine. Well, look, but, and including observations of, we know we're back to the same thing, the observations.
I understand. I was actually talking to her.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I think we should take a roll call vote on this, please.
Commissioner Michalak?
Abstain.
Commissioner Plum?
Yes.
Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Commissioner Garbett?
No.
All right. Motion carries. Moving on to our 3. Consider assigning 2 or fewer commissioners to research the Secretary of State's voting system standards as it relates to Shasta County's Hart Intercivic Verity voting system, specifically to ballot rejection rates and ballot printing, and draft recommendations for commission consideration to send to the Board of Supervisors at a later date. Dolores?
I'm just going to say something here before. On March 16, 2022, Northern California Sheriff charged with
Can you please stick
voter
to
fraud.
the agenda items, please?
Just so you know, what is happening in the election department, Mr. Tom Toller, anybody else working there, but the one who in charge should be charged as a felon.
Okay.
Felony charges should be charged because of what's been happening, duplicating ballots.
Okay, we're past duplication, and I've given you a lot of leeway already today.
Okay,
So
you're talking about the machines.
right now, we're talking about creating a ad hoc committee to research
the research
voting standards versus the Hart Intercivic Verity voting system.
Okay, so every time you have a committee, it's always going to be you guys. Why can't you get the voters to be involved? Get somebody else besides you guys. It shouldn't just be you. Let some other eyes look to oversee this, because you might be missing something. So I'm just saying that, it sounds like you do these committees and committees and committees, and I have to say that I understood what he said. Some of the people, I don't say the same thing. I say totally different. I don't care about seeing what you can't see. I look at freaking paper trail. I look at documents. That's what my concern, because paper trail doesn't change, doesn't lie. You have documents to be able to prove what's happening. Okay, but when you were complaining that you can't see and all that, that's totally different. That's like, oh, I can't see this. My gosh.
Okay, bring it back.
Okay, so I'm just saying, You need to have somebody else to be in this committee besides you,
I
okay?
think I can speak for all of us up here.
Oh,
We do consult with people in the public.
You do, but you do it after. You don't really kind of go out of the box. You should bring it on the agenda to be able to appoint somebody else besides you guys. Get the voters involved. This is about the voters. This is about their vote. This is about freaking them. Their rights been freaking violated. So for you guys, just three of you to always take their votes and make decisions for them, it's not right. Just like we're bitching about the voters and the ballots, we should consider them to treat them fair for them to have a voice. So it shouldn't be just you guys. Don't tell me to go. Don't try to, here's the thing. I understand, but you try to silence people too many times, and I've seen that when you walk away, you do that. You try to silence people, and that's people's freedom of speech. Yeah, you go ahead and silence me. But you're violating, here's the thing, you're violating my rights too. So, no, I'm just trying to tell you, you ain't no fucking different than what other people are doing. You expect people to respect you, you're doing the same thing.
Chair, you have the option to recess the meeting for a few minutes if you would like.
No.
And please give her a warning.
Okay. Dolores, if you can't stay on topic, you will be shut down. And you have been off topic every time you've gotten up to the podium. So if you get up again, you need to be on topic, please.
Okay. Good afternoon. So there are problems. We are in violation of the Secretary of State's voting system standards that they have created to oversee the different voting machines we use in elections. So one of the big things that I want to address right away is that there are ballot printing guidelines for the HART machines. These guidelines were not followed by our county. What we saw was that on page 33, it told you specifically to do a test print to make sure that your paper was going to work and be read by the machine clearly before you sent out live ballots. This was on page 33 of the ballot printing guidelines that our ROV has and that our ROV undoubtedly sent to Runbeck. It had the exact specifications on it. So the voting system standards, they state that the technical data sheet, which is contained in that packet, those guidelines, must be followed to a T. They obviously clearly were not followed. And this was not just the fault of Runbeck. This was the fault of Joanna Francesca and Thomas Toller because they had this information. I know they had it because they gave it to me in a public records request. That's how I came upon it. And I'd like to say also that it's not just these items that you mentioned here. It's also the audit log. The voting system standards guidelines includes what should be done for the audit log. And what we saw for the audit log is that our audit logs from HART InterCivic are not compliant with these guidelines. So I'd like you to add that as well to this ad hoc committee. The audit log must create a sequential ordering of events. And with the time changes that we witnessed, the ordering of events was not kept accurate. So instead of following what happened when, it followed the new timestamp. And when they changed the timestamp changed. So the ordering of events was not correct and did not follow the voting system guidelines. And I'd like to further say that Nevada County, California also faced the same problem, but they ensured that their observers were allowed to see over the shoulders of every single duplication pair. They ensured that the ballots were correctly removed and rejected to be duplicated. So I think we can do better here. Even though we do have a limit and a constraint on space, I still think, Nevada County was also very limited on their space, but they made concessions to the observers to be able to oversee the whole process from beginning to end. So I think we can do better, and I think this is a very important area, and I thank you for following up on it.
Thank you, Dan. Oh, Dan?
Go ahead, Beth. You're up.
I'd like to see the voting standards, but I'd also like you guys to request the total percentage of rejections that went through the first time, excluding the precinct ballots, okay, so we get an accurate percent. And then I'd also like to get the percentage of rejections the second time through, which there should not have been any overspray. And I would like for you guys to make those both public to compare. Here's what the standards are. Here's what we happened. And now, do you really think we had a fair election and there was all accuracy? Thank you.
The rejection rate is way out of standard. The minute we got the second rejection, we should have shut down the machines because we were no longer in compliance. You get 2 rejections in 500, that's unacceptable. We are getting, according to Tollard, 250 rejections per 500 ballots. It's unacceptable. It's not in compliance with the law, therefore we broke the law, therefore this election needs to be redone. I appreciate Commissioner Lund trying to get you guys to describe what it was you saw, where were the machines. She was describing the room. That's a crime scene over there. We need to rope it off with the protective tape and declare it a crime scene, and you need to get photographs and document it, and you need to hold all those ballots. It was a crime scene what happened over there. Our ballots were falsely duplicated. All kinds of laws were broken. We need to wake up on that. On the rejection rate, what's the rejection rate on our duplication of the machines? If you guys watched the tabulators run, how that was, you'd have to wait for them to run through that. Well, what were you waiting for? You were waiting for them to pull it out and turn paper at 90 degrees depending on whether it was accepted or rejected. They weren't looking at what ballot it was. They were doing it based on what time it came out of the machine. There was no follow-up. It's insanity what happened over there. So the rejection rate, just alone by the machine shutting it down, you gotta go with this and stop the madness, declare it a crime scene, and redo it. And Commissioner Mike, I appreciate you understanding it. You agreed that you were saying that we can't see. Everybody out here agrees, and you agree. You could not adequately see. A new building is not what we need. That building would only be needed for one day, and we don't need to buy a new building. We need to do this at the precinct level. You do the count that night. We did it this way for hundreds of years. This is insane to bring it all in and for 2 months have people over there doing questionable activity, unobserved. Let's do it one night. Everybody, all the volunteers count it that night. It's very simple. We got all the systems in place to make it happen. Stop being fed the lie that the machine helps. The machine is why we're all having these meetings. It's because the machine screwed up. Get it back to people.
Chair,
Yes.
if I could just remind the commission and members of the public, this particular item has to do with the commission considering assigning 2 or fewer commissioners to research the Secretary of State's voting system standards, which is currently attached to the agenda as it relates to the Shasta County HART intercivic Verity voting system.
Right. And the last speaker was talking about rejection rates, so there was just sort of a fine line there, but it was on my radar. Okay.
All right, Lori Bridgeford, and I'm addressing R3, the voting system standards versus the HART intercivic, or potentially any other machine. Mr. Garbett, if you're trying to think that a building or a room is going to make a difference, it's not. Cheating can happen anywhere, anytime. So I just want to clarify that. And it doesn't matter what machine system we're looking at. They all have a back door. They're all proprietary. They're all connected. It's a joke. It's a farce. It's being busted all the time. So my concern for the commission is to and somehow address the board, because if indeed Tom, Toller, ROV, and Joanna and all the rest of them made the erroneous problem of not doing the proper check, Runback and HART Intercivic will not pay us back. We're going to have to eat that fund, that money.
Okay, I need to...
So I'm just talking about machines. I'm trying to understand HART Intercivic as it relates to the voting system standards, and I'm just saying it just looks like with this rejection rate, I hope our ballots are being protected in case there's a fire or some serious calamity, and we lost all our organic raw ballots. That's just something, a common sense thing to consider. And what was the other point I wanted to make? Yeah, it's just no different. This is what happened in J6 days, the big don't look, don't see. It's not this overt, but it's still the same thing. People are flipping over clipboards on us. Why are they doing that? There's so much more that we have to say, but because we're limited to what the R3, R2, stick to the topic, there's so much. And I wish we could have like a town hall or something to really go over this. I mean, we have the dirty voter rolls. There's so many of us know so much what's going on. It's very difficult to stick to a little tiny topic and then have all the answers. I'm just saying it's a nightmare. Thank you.
I'd just like to mention that the Secretary of State's voting system standards and the Hart InterCivic Verity information are both attached to the agenda online, if anybody wants to look at those.
242 pages.
Yeah, 242 pages. So, all right, anybody else for R3? I've seen none. I'll bring it back to the commissioners. Once again, I would like to be on this because this is of interest to me. So I don't know if anybody else is interested.
I would like to work on this too with you.
Okay. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay. Any comments? I see Mr. Garbutt in queue. Are you still?
That was for the previous
okay.
Mode that
All right.
never got called.
Okay. Commissioner Mitchell, did you?
I'm sorry, it didn't come off.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Anybody else have anything to say? Okay, I'll make a motion that Commissioner Lund and Commissioner Hanson form an ad hoc committee to research the Secretary of State's voting system standards as it relates to Shasta County's Hart InterCivic Verity voting system, specifically to ballot rejection rates and ballot printing, and draft recommendations for Commission consideration to send to the Board of Supervisors at a later date.
Second that vote.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we'll take a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Michelet?
Yes.
Commissioner Plum?
Yes.
Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Commissioner Garbutt?
No.
Okay, motion carries. Moving on to R4. Consider assigning 2 or fewer commissioners. 1 second, please. Okay, R4. Consider assigning 2 or fewer commissioners to research the 1% manual tally from the November 5th Shasta County Presidential General Election, including observations of the tally process and draft recommendations for Commission consideration to send to the Board of Supervisors at a later date. And I have Laura Hobbs.
Okay, I'm going to describe what I witnessed as an observer at the 1% tally. First of all, we've never gotten the results back for the tally they did regarding the logic and accuracy testing. They also did a hand count for that. But for the 1% manual tally, it wasn't of all ballots cast. Joanna told me that it was just the early votes and the election day votes, so it wasn't 1% of everything, according to what she said that day. But we, as observers, we could not see the voters' markings on the ballot. We were kept at a distance. It was sometimes hard even to hear what people were calling out as the numbers. We attempted to write down the numbers that were counted for each race and whatnot. We were treated very harshly. Of course, you have to be quiet in that area because people are counting. You don't want them to lose track. But Janae was specifically very I don't know the right word, but let me just describe what happened. We were talking in very, very hushed voices, if at all. We were using hand motions to communicate with each other. And even when there was no audible noise made from any of us, Janae would spot us from across the room because she thought she saw one of our lips moving. And she would call us out and call the security guard and give us a warning, even though there was no actual noise that she could have physically heard from the distance where she was at. And we were told to write questions down, give them to Janae, give them to Thomas Toller, who was sitting there next to her. So I did that. She would look at the question, read it, roll her eyes, giggle, crumple up that piece of paper, throw it on the floor, and not respond. So then I would write another question, sometimes the very same question, asking again twice, trying to get a response. One of the questions I ask is, how come I can't see which ballots and which districts and which batches were selected? Can I see the random selections of ballots that you guys chose? Can I see that list? And I'd been asking already for weeks for this, and because they actually drew that on election night. That's when they decided which areas they would be doing the 1% on. And she saw that, and she just giggled, threw it aside. No accountability, and no actual attempt or desire to have transparency, to explain things to the public, to share these public documents that were created on county time, that according to sunshine laws should be available to any of us here in the public. They were hiding these documents and not sharing them, and tried to ridicule and make the observers feel bad just for being there, and that's wrong.
Thank you. Next. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Dan, I keep doing this to you. Dan?
I'll go this time.
Okay.
I won't take it first.
The 1% hand count, we still haven't had the results of that. So how did they certify if we're not having the results from the count that went on? There's when they did the test on that, they did a hand count to get practice for the 1%. And then they ran that through the machine. We didn't get the results of that. But my big question on that is, if they ran that to test the hand count, to do all the checks and balances that they're supposed to do, why was the overspray not noticed then? That was performed a week before November 5th. Why were we just told about overspray after November 5th? Because all those ballots were randomly selected. So I just feel like there's a whole lot of questions that are left open that weren't covered by that. So I think the 1% needs to be questioned, and we need to be able to get answers. The hostility over in that office is unbelievable. To citizen volunteer observers, hostilely treated the whole time, down to having to ask permission to go to the bathroom. It's unacceptable.
There was no permission to go to the bathroom. There was a schedule, okay? But the 1% count was the most ridiculous thing I've witnessed, I think, in the whole time that I've ever been observing. They would take and have ballots that they're supposed to count, and they'd go through it, and there'd be nothing in there because there wasn't a B card. And that's what they were doing, the measure. So it's like, okay, so that one was 0, and they take it back up. And then they bring down another one, and so many of what I observed, there was nothing to count in the whole ballots. So now, did they replace those ballots with others to make it come up to a 1%? Or did they just, nope, nothing in there, so nothing to count? And I was recording the time and the precinct and all that, and the number of ballots, and I would look at my cell phone to see what time it was so I could record the time. Okay, and Janae comes over and says, there is no taking pictures. Okay, who's taking pictures? Because I'm looking at my clock. And so I said, I'm looking at my clock on my cell phone. She says, well, it looked like you were taking pictures. I said, I'm not. Do you want to see it? She says, there's a clock on the wall. I said, my neck bothers me. I cannot just twist and look at the clock every time we do a batch. So Janae is the only person I have a complaint about. I mean, because we should not have been treated like that. We are human beings, we are citizens, and we deserve better. And, you know, yeah, they would not let us come in until after they were already processing some days. It was a ridiculous election. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're on the 1% tally.
Okay, Lori Bridgeford, and I absolutely was a part of the 1% manual tally. It was on the first floor. There were 4 different stations. They had a pair of people. I'm trying to give people a visual because if you weren't there, you have no idea what I'm talking about. 2 people receiving the information, 2 people that would go up and down the stairs or the elevator, whichever method they chose. Oftentimes, they would bring down A or B card and they'd sign in, and then it wouldn't be acceptable, so they'd have to go back upstairs and go get a different batch. Complete waste of time. It's impossible to do more than one station at a time because they're calling off. It was, say for instance, it was a SCOE race with 5 or 6 individuals as candidates. I've got the form that we use to keep us on track, and we track the batch number, whether it was a vote by mail or if it was election day, and then we'd have the precinct. Well, guess what? Every once in a while, the people in the county would forget to write that information down because, again, we can't speak, God forbid, and they wouldn't have it there. So one time I stood up, cleared my throat, pointing that this person forgot to put this vital and crucial information for me, the observer, and I was scolded. And I didn't say a word. Nothing. This is how bad it got to be toward the end. And sure, some of them are tired and fed up, and they probably don't want to be there. I get it. However, those of us have to work extra hard to just not even flinch or sneeze. Nothing. And so the bathroom breaks were off one day. I was there on a Saturday. I said, what's the schedule? Is it the same that they had for Monday through Friday? No, it's the same. And then when it came to be the time to go, oh, no, we have a different schedule. Completely opposite.
We're not here to talk about bathroom breaks.
I'm talking about my experience at the 1% manual days.
Yeah.
I'm a human being.
Not to interrupt, but
you weren't there.
We're talking about your bathroom.
I want my time.
How you're treated. And I would like to.
But this is part of my 1% experience. I'm trying to tell you. While I'm there, this is the absolute insanity we have to endure and suffer through as volunteers. We're not paid for this at all. I'm taking time out of my job to be at these positions to observe. So I am absolutely in concurrence that it was starting to go to hell toward the end, and we were trying to be as civil as can be with the armed guard from Ardent. Why did we need to pay high security armed guards? I'm not in charge of that. I'm just saying we all paid for this. And my other concern with the 1% manual hand count thing was I was told by Janae it was a mix of raw, real, original ballots with duplicates. I'm like, how do you put that together and then have that come out on this form with the batch, the precinct, the totals, and then sometimes they'd have an undervote, so they'd have to spend time. Sometimes it's 25 minutes on one thing.
Okay, thank you.
It's insane.
Yeah, I was in on the original or the first of the manual count, and they had trouble with verbiage. It was 1 and done, 0 and 1. When they were counting, put them in boxes. And this one lady, they would correct her. People writing down would correct her. And then she made 7 mistakes in a row, and I went, ugh. And so I did that, and I knew I was out. So I just kept on going. Well, they had a guard with me, and he goes, you didn't do anything wrong, but she has a right to feel intimidated. So she felt intimidated, so I went on up and started watching something else, and then they came and got me and said, yeah, we're going to continue again. But in the meantime, I went to Joanne and said, you got to change your verbiage. Instead of you're saying 1 and done, they're getting 1 and none mixed up, and it's confusing these people. So I said, maybe you should use complete, finished, or over. And I would suggest over since it's simpler. But they chose complete. Well, and then they got somebody that didn't make mistakes, so that went fine. But that one little lady was making mistakes on the verbiage. And anyway, I was brought back in, sat down to watch them, and they brought a new lady in, and she didn't make mistakes. But that one girl that was in charge, she stood in front of me. Like I sat at the seat watching, and then she stood in front of me, so I was seeing her back. And I didn't, that's how people are. But it is America, and it's supposed to be free elections, transparent, but I don't call that transparency. I did have one guy there give me a drink of water one time, and that was pretty nice of him, but the people going in observing, and I'm there, I want their vote to count as good as mine. We have that right. Even though I disagree with some people, they have a right to vote, and it should be upright. And you're not getting it there, especially with the hand count. Not once in the days did I see a ballot check. I'm taking their word for it, but there wasn't anybody in my persuasion over there. And again, Mr. Toller, but anyway, I think you guys should get back to hand count and do it right.
All right, anyone else for R4?
Yeah, I have a card in there.
Yeah, I didn't have one for her, but that's fine.
We have one that was marked R5, not R4.
Oh, yeah, there was a mistake there. Good. Okay, I just want to say that I never had a problem being in the election department, ever. So, but the problems that we have there has been created by you guys.
So stick to
And I am going to stick to it, all right? So don't interrupt me. I understand, but I'm just making it clear that you understand. Those problems are created by you. In the hand count and all this observing. Sometimes I know that a lot of people go in there just, they do create problems. So stop ignoring that the people go in there. They're so innocent because they're not innocent. Observing the election and to observe the 1%, all that, people should not go in there also create problems.
Nobody created problems.
Do you have anything to comment on about creating an ad hoc committee to look into the 1%?
Why even create a committee? You guys, how long you been on this commission? How long? Why did you get a head start? So this problem, you knew that we were going to have problems. Why do you guys wait till the last minute? The next meeting is going to be when? When are you going to take action? After the election is already resolved and everything else? My gosh, it's your problems you create. You guys create everything because you don't stay on top of things. And then now, when's the next meeting? Is that when you're going to say, well, let's do this for the what? The next election? We're screwed already. We need to take action now, not the next month or the next year. Jeez.
All right, bringing it back to commissioners. Commissioner Mitchell?
I understand that the 1% results haven't been reported yet. Is that correct?
I don't personally know.
They haven't been.
That's what somebody said.
It's actually, they haven't been. And my response is that this should be tabled until it has been.
Okay. I'm sure it will be soon if the election is to be officially certified. So.
In other words, we're considering investigating something that hasn't been done yet, and who's going to...
This is just, it's also the process of how they do it, anything related to it.
I would assume that the reason that we would research a 1% thing is if we had some concern about it at all. Now, okay, and that we should wait until we have a 1%, until this is complete before we have said it.
Okay, so I put this on the agenda because I would like to look into this and research it, because I was there observing on the day when they did the random draw for the 1% manual tally, and it was a cluster. It's supposed to be, they're supposed to announce it to the public. It's supposed to be an observable event. We were downstairs, locked out of going upstairs, and then all of a sudden they shuffled us upstairs, but they didn't tell us why or what they were doing, and then somebody just mentions, oh, we're doing the manual tally draw, and they go look at the screen. You looked at the screen and some things popped up there, and before you could ask what it was or write anything down, the screen went blank, and it was over. The whole process was over. And when I asked what happened? Can I get a copy of it? What's going on? I was told that they needed to redact some of the information. Well, why do you have to redact the information? So, then I sat down with Tom Toller and had a conversation with him about what transpired. And he wasn't quite sure what had transpired because he wasn't involved in the process. His staff were. And he wasn't sure why something needed to be redacted either. And I have not since had, I did have an opportunity to mention it, but they were too busy, up until last week, to get back with me on it. So I want to personally follow up on that, as well as everything else associated with that manual tally that may be an issue.
Yep. So, in other words, what you're proposing is that it's restricted to the tally process because that's what you've talked about. Not the
whole 1% manual tally process. All aspects. Yeah. Commissioner Garbett?
Yeah, hasn't the election already been certified? That means that the Register of Voters has certified the results.
That's what I understand.
Yeah.
I don't,
So it's kind of water under the bridge at this point.
I guess it has to go through the board. I don't know if
No,
it's
the board,
meaningful to go through the board.
correct me if I'm wrong, but the board has no, it's just a ministerial thing.
The board needs to declare it.
It's a custodial thing. It has, I mean, whether they certify it or not is irrelevant. Would that be correct?
So the Registrar of Voters has certified the election and shared that information publicly and with the Secretary of State, and I believe it's agendized for tomorrow for the board to consider declaring the results of the election.
But even if they don't vote to certify it, it doesn't mean anything.
Under the law, the board is not part of the certification process.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else on this topic?
So this is important as a person's vote. So if there's an issue with the 1% manual tally, we're looking at all of these things in the order that they're supposed to be done. November 5th is specific for this. That's what we're looking into. Things can still be revealed, and I'm going to support it. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Chair Lund and Commissioner Hansen to this ad hoc committee. Considering assigning to commissioners who research the 1% manual tally of November 5th, Shasta County presidential election, including observations of the tally process and the draft recommendations for the commission, considering to send to the Board of Supervisors at a later date, because I believe accountability is super important right now. Thank you.
So I'm fine with doing this myself unless you want to be involved.
I'd like to be involved.
Okay. Well, I'll second the motion. Can we take a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Michalak?
No.
Commissioner Plum?
Yes.
Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Hansen?
Yes.
Commissioner Garbett?
No.
Motion carries. Moving on to R5, receive commissioner and ad hoc committee reports. I'll start down there with you, Commissioner Michalak.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Well, you had mentioned before about the recommendation, basically to have if we're going to make a recommendation, have it be about observation. If you want to expand on that now, I guess, no.
No, I would recommend that we consider that as a future agenda item.
Okay.
There you go, perfect.
That's fine.
I was going to say we could entertain a motion for a future agenda item.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought we had an ad hoc committee concerning observation, but we can sort that out later.
We might have one as it relates to observation. I think Commissioner Michalak's concern was primarily having to do with a building and looking into what it would take to potentially get a new building or a different building and having an agenda item to that effect for the commission commission's consideration.
Or renovation, or what, yeah, exactly.
So I would encapsulate that as to maybe an infrastructure need for the elections department.
Agreed.
Well, you had mentioned previously, Commissioner Mitchell, that your business, you have enough cameras that you can see everything, and there's no reason that that office can't have enough cameras to see everything. So there, you know, maybe if there is not funding, a building isn't. Yeah, I know we can't talk about it now. Okay. All right, but yeah, I get it, and we will agendize that, and that would be great. Thank you. How about you?
My report includes activities since November 4th and mainly reviewing recommendations that were previously submitted to the Board of Supervisors, but no action has been taken. And then also reading the information about the voting system standards and how things can be done better going forward. A lot of research and reading. The California voting system standards was submitted in 2014 by the Secretary of State. Many of my activities were as a private citizen. I want to make that clear as well in case there's any confusion, but some of the observations were as commissioner, and I have scheduled an appointment with Tom Toller for the 12th of December, which is next Wednesday, and I'll review my report on the 16th at that time. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we go next to you? Sure. Mr. Garbett?
Yeah, obviously this election was a mess. I mean, clearly we had problems with the ballots. We had problems with the Hart machines. If we're looking for somebody to blame, that would not be Tom Toller. That would not be Joanna Franciscott or anybody in the elections office. That would be with the people that got rid of our perfectly functioning Dominion system. So even if we had stayed with Runbeck and had Dominion, there would not have been any problem scanning those ballots. So that's my observation there. Now that the election is done, certified in the books, to all the people that come up here and talk about hand counting, limited absentee ballots, going to one-day voting, no mailed ballots, voter ID, no drop boxes, open source code versus proprietary code. We have two elected officials, Heather Hadwick and Megan Dolly. I would take those concerns to them because this commission has no authority to change the election laws, nor does the Board of Supervisors, nor does the Register of Voters. So please spare us and just take your requests to them, have them sponsor a bill, take it to the legislature, get it passed, and get it to the governor's desk, and then you can get all the things that you want, because you can't get that here. You're not going to get it here ever.
The Board of Supervisors.
Board of Supervisors has no authority to change the election laws. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hanson?
So I've been busy doing my committee assignments, but also I've been printing a lot of the documents that we're needing for the various things, such as the Secretary of State's voting system, the standards, and things like that. But I want to make a statement, and it had to do with last meeting, because it wasn't addressed, and I'm going to address it. I need to address something that happened at our last Elections Commission meeting, November 23rd, 2024, and I didn't say anything at the time. The issue had occurred because I waited for a chair, county council, or deputy county executive officer to speak about it. This needs to be addressed due to the fact that similar issues have occurred at several of our meetings. Mr. Garbett, you started your report at the particular meeting by stating that you were doing what you were doing as an appointed commissioner, as we are all supposed to do with our reports. But as you continued, you called Supervisor Jones a liar, which is frankly beneath the position of a commissioner or anyone that holds an official position. Calling Supervisor Jones a liar is unnecessary and counterproductive to what we are trying to accomplish on this election commission. It is demeaning and insulting to those who hold office. This commission is not a platform to air your personal opinions about the supervisors and how they conduct business. That can be addressed by going to a regular Board of Supervisor meeting and signing up to speak for 3 minutes in the public comment time. Our duty is to observe, investigate, report, and make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors, not to provide personal commentary about what the supervisors are or are not doing. The personal opinions show about how this commission conducts business is not appropriate. You have done this almost every time that you have given a report, but give an opinion or try to tear down the work we do. I could go on with this, but what I'm trying to say is let's stop sabotaging or trying to tear it down. If you're a part of it, be a part of it. Thank you.
All right, the only thing I have to report, I've been out of commission for a couple of weeks, but prior to that, I spent some time observing. And, I'd just like to say that in general, all of the election staff except for one they were helpful and responsive to questions, as time allowed. And I was able to observe anything that I wanted to observe. The only issue was that there wasn't meaningful observation in a lot of areas. So where we were allowed to observe, I could observe, I could ask questions, everything was fine. The staff was wonderful, again, except for one person, and I've already addressed that with Tom Toller. Hopefully something will come of that in the future, because it sounds like other people have experienced a similar situation. So anyway, that's all I have to report. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.
Wait, Chair.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You're too quick for me, I'm sorry. Real quick, Commissioner Michalek, if we could get a restatement of the motion that you would like to make from your commissioner report, and I have some suggestions, if that would help. If anyone would be willing to make a motion to consider assigning 2 or fewer commissioners to research and draft recommendations pertaining to infrastructure needs of the elections department, including but not limited to what would be needed to expand the needs for more observation. Something to that effect, if we could get a motion in a second.
Can I suggest?
We're talking about including this on a future agenda item.
Yes, sir, that's
You and I
correct.
can deal with that before the next agenda is created, correct?
Can I just suggest that the 3 of us meet right now after the meeting and just discuss it real quick?
So it'd be much cleaner to just make a motion, have a second, and then we can finesse the agenda language.
Let's hear your rephrasing again.
Sure, so the phrasing for the motion, the suggested motion would be someone to make a motion to consider assigning 2 or fewer commissioners to research and draft recommendations pertaining to the infrastructure needs of the elections department, including but not limited to what would be needed to expand space for observers, something to that effect.
I don't understand, though. We don't need to make a motion to put it on the agenda. So why are we even doing this in open session? I'm confused.
It's the appropriate way for a member of the body to place it instead of the chair. So this is the
Well, I know, but he can ask me
This
to
is
do
the
it.
appropriate way
Yeah.
for him to do it.
Okay.
If he can just make his motion.
I think we should discuss it, though, because anyway.
Well, then why don't you and I discuss it? Because
Sounds
I think
perfect.
would you text me that or email me that, and then I'll put it in. I'll do it I'm better at that. I'm better at formalizing things.
Can do.
And just organizing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a comment? I also had made a request for an agenda item right after the last meeting, and I don't know what happened to it. Does anybody remember it? I had requested that...
Are we still in session?
Yes.
Are we still?
Yeah, we're still in session.
I'm asking staff, are we still in session? Because I closed the meeting. I mean, can you talk with him about that after the meeting?
To be fair, Chair, I interjected, and because we're continuing to have this conversation, I feel like the meeting has not been recessed. That being said, Commissioner Garbett, if you'd like to make a motion for the commission to consider putting something on the forthcoming agenda, that's your prerogative.
Yes, I'd like to have a performance review of the Election Commission now that the commission has been in existence for a year. I think the taxpayers of Shasta County need to know what we've accomplished. We've made many recommendations. We've made many ad hoc committees. So I think the public needs to know what they have gotten for their money. You know, for the $40,000-$50,000 that's been spent on this commission over the last year, what changes have been made? What recommendations has the board taken up? Which ones have they approved? Which ones have gone to the Register of Voters office? Which recommendations have been implemented? I think the county employees go through performance reviews on a regular basis. I think it's time that since this commission's been in existence for a year, that we review our own work and determine what effect we've had on the election office.
Yeah, I don't personally think it's necessary. All of the recommendations that we've approved are on our website, so the public can see those. We've already reported here in open session
Madam Chair,
at previous meetings.
if I will. Ultimately, there's no agenda item for you guys to review yourselves. Ultimately, you're appointed by the board. If the board doesn't like the way this commission's going, they can either dissolve it or they can remove a member. So I would just say that's not an appropriate item.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So are we adjourned? Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Brad's on the naughty list.